Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Happy Monday, my people. I hope you guys all had a wonderful weekend. Tons to get into. Cecil Lammey, he is spreading a lot of things coming out of Shrine Week as they prepare for the Shrine game. He's headed off now to the Senior Bowl. We're going to get into Embiid dodging the Nuggets yet again here in the Mile High City. Plus, the Avs did a trade, so there's tons to get into. And NFL football. How could I possibly forget? So I'm very happy. First of all, grab your cup of coffee. Hang out with us for the next 20, 30 minutes. But Richie Carni is hitting with me in the building. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you, Rachel?
I'm good. It's a Monday. I'm like, okay, let's get this stuff rolling. And Cecil Lammey is really just providing us with a ton. So let's just go through it. There's like 5 tweets I want to get into straight off the bat that is like, oh, okay. Number 1, starting. There is belief by many in the scouting community that Sean Payton has something cooking for the early portion of the NFL draft. People I trust do not see Denver waiting for a falling QB. These evaluators believe the Broncos will make a big move for a QB. This just makes me think, oh, Rich is like, yeah,
let's
baby.
go.
First of all, after seeing all of the mock draft stuff that we've been seeing, it's like, come on. I don't want an outside linebacker. I don't want a left tackle. I don't want any of those things.
Draft
just
a corner.
Give me the quarterback. And this gives me hope that there will indeed be a quarterback. I almost said corner after you just said that. A quarterback coming to the Denver Broncos. But it also sounds like they're going to be moving up, which means you have to give some things back.
True. And listen, I think that I just want to say this. I'll say this off the top. The Shrine game, the Senior Bowl, these kinds of things in the off season, those are kind of like the room where it happens, to steal a Hamilton reference. Conversations are had, private meetings, breakfasts, kind of secluded things. Those all happen there. So real intel can be gathered from there. And Cecil Lammey for the last 20 years has been right there in the thick of it. And Andrew Mason right alongside him. So it's really exciting that we have access to that kind of information to tap into and things like that.
Amazing. People know who Mace and Cecil are every single time they go out there. And that's how you get all of the information, right? Like people start to talk when there's trust in all of those people. Well, none of this is like random stuff that Cecil's throwing out there.
GMs, team executives, they're all there.
Yeah.
They're all there to evaluate the next crop of incoming players. And so if you can capture them while they're there, cold pops start flowing, things start happening. That's
drinking that lemonade, baby.
Exactly. So, but to your point about his first tweet there, I love that because what I want from the Broncos, I want them to be in on everything. I want there to be, because in the past, it feels like we've gone into drafts and we've gone into things being like, that's not really in the cards. Or, we just signed Case Keenum, so we're not going to also draft Josh Allen. You know what I mean? Or like, I don't want that. I want there to be no holds barred, no restrictions. So if they're in on a quarterback in general, great. They should be. If they're in on moving up for a quarterback, they should be. Now, can they do it? Because you have to make the math work and all that. I don't know. But you should be open to the idea. You shouldn't be closed-minded about anything because this franchise needs a kick. They need something to get them going. It feels like they've made, they got new ownership. They moved on from the trust. They found a head coach in Sean Payton. It took them a couple of tries.
They thought they found a QB.
They thought they found a QB in Russ. They're still looking. But it just feels like they have to keep moving forward because if you're not moving forward, you're going backwards. If you're stagnant, if you're staying the same, you're going backwards because everybody else around you is going to move.
Yep. You ready for this next one?
Yep.
This one kind of caught me a little bit by surprise. We've heard a lot of QBs linked to the Broncos, but not so much this one. Right now, people I trust see Drake Maye as the perfect fit for Sean Payton. There is belief that Jaden Daniels could go off the board higher than Maye, but these two are likely to go back-to-back in the NFL draft. How are you feeling about Drake Maye? I feel like that this is one that, I don't know. It hasn't been totally linked to the Broncos, but the fact that they're saying this could be a really good fit is intriguing.
You know what? This one's interesting because Caleb Williams has been the de facto number 1 QB for 2 years now. And outside of maybe Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck, Peyton and Eli, and John Elway, there haven't been a whole lot of quarterbacks over the last 40 years that can say that.
Yeah.
So in the same vein of when we were talking on our little war room panel, where I said, how differently would we look at Josh Allen if Patrick Mahomes played in the NFC? Because Josh Allen and the Bills just keep hitting that Chiefs ceiling, and it changes the perception of it. So how differently do you think we might be looking at Drake Maye, who's been the de facto number 2 quarterback this whole year? It was always Caleb and Drake. How differently would we be looking at Drake Maye if Caleb Williams had left last year, or if he wasn't eligible until next year? He might be the number 1 guy.
For sure.
So I think you need to look at that, and that's intriguing. I feel like I deep down have some apprehension or maybe some PTSD as it relates to Drake Maye, because he comes from North Carolina, and you have the Mitchell Trubisky, and you have the, all that. So I feel like that's where the pit of my stomach is at. But you know what? People had that same trepidation about Ohio State quarterbacks, and look at CJ Stroud.
Gosh, CJ Stroud.
So that's why I think it's more important to have an open mind about things. And I'm very thankful that in theory and in actuality, NFL scouts and GMs are a hell of a lot better at their job than I am at their job. So
I'm glad you're not an NFL scout too.
But Jaden Daniels, I like Jaden Daniels.
Well, it's funny because Drake Maye has been QB number 2 for so many months, and it feels like he's the least talked about. And I don't know why that is. Like, it doesn't really make sense in my mind, right? We talk about Caleb Williams, Daniels so much, Penix, JJ, Bo Nix, like all of those names, and I feel like Drake Maye just kind of gets passed over, and I'm not sure why.
I think that's fair, and I don't know if that's because the other QBs around them have more compelling storylines. Caleb Williams is obviously the heir apparent. He's the next generational guy.
He's gonna be a bust.
Jaden Daniels is the Heisman Trophy winner who had an electric season at LSU. JJ McCarthy just won a national championship. Bo Nix has been in college as long as some doctors, so there's all these kinds of things. Whereas Drake Maye, it's like, no, he's a good quarterback. He's a good quarterback that's coming out basically exactly when you thought he would. And he doesn't have the flashy Jaden Daniels kind of electric athleticism. He doesn't have the pocket presence and the gravitas of a Caleb Williams, all of that. So he doesn't stick out enough for there to be grabby headlines about him. But that doesn't at all mean that he's not equipped to excel at the next level. In fact, in some instances, if you go back throughout history, those guys turn out better than the ones with flashy, stickers and headlines.
No, I agree. That's what I think with Caleb Williams, right? Everybody's, I mean, for years, it feels like we've been talking Caleb Williams. When he goes into the draft, he's going to be that number 1 guy, yada, yada. Feels like sometimes when that happens, that's when you're like, oh, you're a bust.
You set the, and it's part of that. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because you set the bar so high.
Yeah,
Trevor Lawrence was the same way. Trevor Lawrence was like, oh my gosh, he's the best prospect since Andrew Luck. And I think Trevor Lawrence he's gotten better and he's done some things, especially now that they gave Urban Meyer the boot.
See ya.
And he's got a real coach behind him. But like for Trevor Lawrence, the bar was set so high that it's like, it's almost impossible for there to be any growth period, learning curve, whatever, because he's just expected to take them to the promised land right out of the gate because he's that good.
No, 100%. Okay, moving on to our next rumor coming out of Shrine Week. I've heard some teams want to see what kind of work ethic Michael Penix has during the week of practice in Mobile. These rumors are somewhat common, but kind of surprising given how he had to fight back from so many injuries. Put a pin in it, Cecil says. That is fascinating.
Yeah, this is where I feel like it's an unfortunate aspect of the job that these scouts, talent evaluators, GMs, executives, coaches have to do, which is you can't just rely on talent. You can't rely on the physics, the metrics, the eye test, all of that, because of the value that these franchises have and the amount of weight that's placed on the quarterback's shoulders to propel these teams to success. You have to kind of play armchair psychologist with some of this stuff. And what that ends up doing is you end up kind of putting yourself in a situation where you potentially overthink it. And we saw that with Justin Herbert. There were rumors and reports coming out of Oregon before the draft that Justin Herbert's not a good leader. He's kind of a beta male. He's not going to be a guy that's going to rally a team around him. And I know he hasn't had, a ton of postseason success in the NFL, but he's about to be like a $300 million quarterback. And there's probably half the franchises in the NFL that would trade their current starting quarterback for a guy like Justin Herbert.
Yep.
So you see that there were questions about Justin Fields coming out beforehand and, all of that. So it's a little bit unfortunate that we have to do this. And I don't know Michael Penix. I've watched him play just about as much as every casual college football fan has in the country. So I certainly don't have any leg to stand on there. But I will say I understand why you have to leave no stone unturned like these teams have to do.
We'll see. And I'm just like, I look at the injuries. He had like 3 injuries in the national championship game. And I'm like, okay.
Guy came back from like 3 or 4 season-ending injuries. And he tore both ligaments in his knee and an aged shoulder.
You enough about it already. Think about the jump from college to the professional level. I'm sorry, but I'm not
like if
rolling with it.
I get what you're saying, but to go back to Cecil's thing, it's like I think, and Cecil kind of alluded to it, that the fact that he continued to battle back and he transferred schools to Washington and he did all that stuff and he took his team to the college football playoff, the national championship. I don't know how a guy could do that without having a drive and a work ethic. I think if Michael Penix didn't get hurt, he might have already been in the NFL by now. He would have left.
No, 100%. But I'm just saying that if I'm a scout or whatever, I'm like, I'm not interested. I can't.
Right. For reasons beyond work ethic.
Yeah.
And that's fair.
No, and just on the injuries.
Because I'm kind of with you.
That's sad. I'm sorry to say, but I'm not looking at him. I don't want him to come to the Denver Broncos. I'm not interested in that because of his injury history.
Yeah.
I don't want to draft the future of the quarterback or of the Denver Broncos and then him be hurt for 3 of the next 5 years.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Makes me sound like a bad guy, I guess, but I don't want that.
And it's partially because it's such an important position. This isn't, when the Broncos drafted Jake Butt in the 5th or 6th round out of Michigan.
Michigan.
Him getting hurt over and over and over again and all that. It's like, man, that's a bummer because in college, even as a fan of a rival school, I'll admit he was awesome in college. He was like that Jason Witten was always open on 3rd down or 4th down. You couldn't stop him, all that stuff. But it never translated to the NFL because he couldn't stay healthy. But it's one thing when you have a mid-round tight end or even a starting tight end that goes through that. It's another when you have a quarterback. It changes the entire trajectory of your franchise.
Think about how hard we dig into Greg Dulcich. Could you imagine if that was the quarterback?
Oh, geez.
Broncos country would riot. We give him so much crap. You cannot do that as a QB. I'm sorry. And I like Penix. Like, I think that he does have really good play, but unfortunately the football gods just like to give him injuries or something. I don't know, man. Okay, moving on. Next one we got. Evaluators are putting Bo Nix higher than the media has. This is a huge difference that some fans don't see. Many in the media run with agent-fed information, and that's not to be trusted. Buzz from Scouch is much more trustworthy. Love that coming out from Cecil, which I agree. Media members can run with whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
it's not uncommon when you hear anything, whether it's sports, news, whatever it is. Everybody's always got an agenda. Agents' agendas are to get their clients and their players into the best situations possible for the most amount of money. Scouts and team and personnel, their jobs are traditionally to align themselves and their organizations in the best light possible with every decision that they make. So it's kind of like I think Cecil's right, but I also think the same is true on the other side. Yep. And it's just up to us as media members, us as fans, as whoever it is, to kind of weed through that information as best you can.
Watch your own tape, do all of that kind of stuff. Do you like Bo Nix or no?
No. I'm not a big I would stay away from JJ McCarthy with a 10-foot pole for reasons beyond my own admitted bias.
It doesn't matter. He's going to go to the Chargers anyways.
For reasons beyond my own admitted bias, I would stay away from JJ McCarthy with a 10-foot pole, and Bo Nix is right behind it. I think JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix set up like two guys that are going to race each other to be who can be the next Mac Jones in the NFL.
The biggest thing I've noticed about Bo Nix is he reminds me sort of, I'm going to get kind of yelled at, of a Russell Wilson, only for this. Because he sees his number 1 pick, and if it doesn't work out, you can tell there's a bit of a, oh, smokes, I'm a panic for a quick second. Like, you can see him kind of go all over the place of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. You can't do that in the NFL.
Bo Nix is a believe in it guy. Believe in it.
Yeah. He's like,
you want to like,
I
just, and maybe this is an admitted kind of bias flaw on my part. Is just like, I don't want my quarterback to have spent that much time in college. Like Stetson Bennett won a national championship at Georgia. He's like 27 years old. Brandon Whedon infamously was like 25, 24 years old or whatever coming out of the draft. And Cleveland like moved up or took him high in the top 15, whatever it was. And it's weird. So I just have this weird innate stigma against like why was he there for that long? To give you a context of the time, Bo Nix at Auburn played against Justin Herbert at Oregon and then took over for Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert, now that Bo Nix is entering the draft, Justin Herbert's about to get paid off of his rookie extension in the NFL. That's just, I don't know. Something's not right there for me. And I'm not saying he's going to be a flameout or the worst quarterback in the NFL, whatever it is. I just am not willing to roll my dice on that guy, personally.
I'm looking it up because he's still 23.
Yeah. I mean, he's I think.
So how has he been in college so long? COVID, I guess, COVID years.
Yeah. They have COVID year, the exemptions and all that, and I don't know if he had any medical exemptions or red shirts or things like that. But he's pushing his way. He's got a master's degree, I think, term wise in the bag. He's pushing toward a PhD at this point if he wanted it.
Where's your PhD?
That's a good question. I got to dig that piece of paper out somewhere.
No, for sure. I'm with you, though. I understand that logic. And I mean, look at how highly we all talked about Stetson Bennett. And then looking now, not a lot's going on.
Well, and at least with Stetson Bennett's case, he was never projected to be a top pick.
No, fair.
You know, he won a national championship, but it's like, hey, we know what this is.
Pump
but like
the brakes a little.
All of a sudden with Bo Nix, it's like, you know, he's a top 15 pick. He's a this, he's a that, or a first round pick, whatever it is. And I don't know. I just that's not a horse that I would want to back if my job was on the line as an executive.
And you tell me this because Richie went up to Boulder quite a lot this season.
I did.
A ton, actually.
Yeah,
so
every
you
home
got
game.
to watch Shaduer Sanders up there.
Did.
A ton. How do you feel about him being potentially the number 1 overall pick in 2025? Because Cecil is saying scouts love Shaduer, and I mean love him. Like me, evaluators want to see him speed things up a bit, but he's a special passer. How you feeling about that one, Richie Carni?
I feel really good about it. For a multitude.
You really think he could be the number 1 overall pick? Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
I do. Well, listen, and there's factors that go into it. One, he's a good college prospect.
Agreed.
He's got that going for him. I watched him play. He has that kind of spark, sizzle, playmaking ability where he'll turn something out of nothing. You know, Mahomes, Allen-esque, Lamar
many times
Jackson.
did he get out of a sack?
I know.
An insane amount.
I made a comment that was somewhat in snark, but somewhat based in truth early on in that season. Of Shaduer reminds me of Michael Porter Jr. And that has a negative stigma about it because Michael Porter Jr., a lot of people are like, you know, a max player shouldn't be your 4th best option on a team, which I agree with and all that. But my thought process with that was Michael Porter Jr., for the majority of his tenure with the Nuggets, he's that guy that will take a shot that you'll be like, no, and then it goes in. So it's like, no, okay. You know, like, hey, all right. Like, that's Mike, you know, all of that. Shaduer scrambles out of the pocket, holds onto the ball, and will make a throw that it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then he completes it for a touchdown or a 2-point conversion. And it's like, okay. Like, he kind of like makes that, like that pit of your stomach, like, oh, like you just don't know when something bad's going to happen. And it leads to turnovers, a la the Dan Campbell philosophy. If you're going to be aggressive every single time, you're going to make mistakes. So he's a good prospect. He has the Deion Sanders hype machine going with him, which makes a difference. Perception and narrative makes a difference going into the draft.
Yeah.
But there's also been enough people beyond myself, because I don't parade myself around like I'm some expert evaluator and all that. I try to take what I see and I do it. But Cecil Lammey, Matt Smith, so many of those guys up in Boulder, Brian Howell, Adam Munster-Tiger, they all watch this guy and they echo the same sentiments. So you take all of that and then you factor in it's not the strongest quarterback draft class projection. I mean, there's that kid from Penn State, I think, whose name is escaping me, who's going to be one of those first round guys. But I mean, in this draft, Shaduer would have had to have beaten out Caleb Williams, which was never going to happen.
Never.
Drake Maye, which was probably not going to happen. Jaden Daniels, who came on strong and won the Heisman and kind of had that rocket ship up to the top. So in this draft class, Shaduer might be 4, 5, maybe 3 at the highest. Next year, those guys aren't there anymore. So
Crazy
it's
to
kind of a
think about
perfect
that.
storm.
Wouldn't that be so wild?
If a Colorado quarterback went number 1 overall, that
Just
would be
thinking about it
insane.
kind of gives me goosebumps.
This team won 1 game 2 years ago.
No, it gives me like goosebumps just thinking about that. That would be, first of all, it'd be so great for the program up there in Boulder.
Mhm.
But also just like the full circle moment for, the Sanders family.
Mhm.
Literally, you guys, I have goosebumps thinking about it.
Did you see that house that Dion got?
Yeah, I know.
You see that casual mansion that
No worries.
the 3 kids just all NIL must be great because
NIL is banking.
those 3 kids chipping in to buy a house like that for their dad, who, by the way, could have just bought the house himself
if he wanted.
You know what I mean? Like this isn't like, I mean, you see the really sweet thing when players get drafted to the NFL and they buy their mom a house, right? Or something like that, like where mom could not have afforded that.
Could never.
So they're like, Mom, you got me to this point. You raised me. I couldn't be here without you do this.
Could go buy
these kids bought their dad a palace and he's got more money than all of them.
I was like, why a house?
It's still really cool. It's just funny.
I said this even on Denver Sports Daily. I think that it's true. I don't think that they would buy a house if there was real talk in their family that, hey, wherever we go, coach or dad's going to follow us. I think it's true he's going to stay.
Oh, you mean next year?
I'm saying for the next couple.
Yeah. However, he was always, in my opinion, going to stay.
Yeah.
To get his sons through.
But I think
through
even
college.
after
that. But listen, Peyton Manning spent his entire career in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Came to Denver for 4 magical years.
Beautiful.
And he's still here.
Beautiful.
He lives here. He's around all the time. He refers to the Broncos as we.
Yeah.
He shows up. He is proud of that because Colorado's special. There's really something special about where we live. And
even
so
if we have hours of
it
traffic
would not
now.
surprise me at all if a Florida boy and a Texas boy in Deion Sanders comes to Boulder, comes to Colorado through happenstance.
Yeah.
And stays afterwards. Now, is he here all the time? Does he refer to the Buffs forever as we? Does he embrace the other teams like Peyton has? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be surprised if he does.
All right. I'm going to give you your roses. You were this close. Everyone, he was this close to having perfect picks throughout the NFL playoffs. How many did you get right? 14?
10 out of 12.
Yeah.
I picked Houston over Baltimore, which
like March Madness.
Houston over Baltimore, which I stand by. I felt like that was a good pick, even though they got kind of smoked. And I picked the Lions over the 49ers, both very confidently, but the Lions, man, that one,
Campbell, America's heart broke.
It was like the Lions became America's team.
They were America's team.
What did you think of Dan Campbell's decision making?
Dude, you always go for the points. I'm sorry, especially because they lost by 3. You always go for the points. I don't care. I get the wanting to be aggressive, but please go for the points. And it crushed me.
I think I tend to lean toward you, but I will say where I stand on it, and it's a specific word that you said that I think is the blessing and the curse of the whole thing.
Oh, I'm scared.
Always. You always go for the points. I don't think you always go for the points. I actually think...
What do you have to do to win the game?
You have to score points.
You have to have the most points.
Right. But
what? You have to have the most points.
You do. To Dan Campbell's credit, that kind of aggressiveness and that mentality is what got them there. I think you could go back through the game logs and find several games that the Lions either won or kept themselves in contention because of that mentality.
What's the saying, though? It's like, fool me once, shame on...
Yeah.
Is it shame on me?
Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah, you're right. Listen, I think
for it one time, fine.
Dan Campbell made some mistakes. He made some mistakes in that. But again, to steal a Zach Parise, 2 things can be true. That mentality in part cost them the game. Now, you could also argue that Jahmyr Gibbs fumbling inside their own 25. The ball doinking off of a defender's helmet and getting caught by Brandon Ayuk for a fluky 51-yard pass. Yeah. The drop touchdown pass. The drop catch on 4th down in the second half.
It wasn't entirely on Dan Campbell.
The fact that they couldn't buy a big play in the second half compared to the first half. All those things contributed to it. But Dan Campbell's aggressive mentality and that philosophy, it is in part what got them too there.
No,
It also created and established an identity for that team to rally around like they had not done in years and years and years. I mean, this was a team that shipped their franchise player off to La La Land and watched him win a Super Bowl before he could develop some kind of bad habit.
Yeah.
And they kind of got this discarded guy in Jared Goff. And then, they bring in Dan Campbell, they bring in Holmes, the GM, and they built around it. But it did cost them. Like you have to, and I think this is something Dan Campbell may learn from. And I know he said after the game, I'm okay with coming up on the wrong end of some of those decisions because I trust my guys. And it's like, you know what? You should trust your guys, but they're also trusting you.
Yeah.
And your job as the head coach is to put them in a position to where if and when they fail, you've got their back. And he didn't do that. He pushed all the chips in the center so that there was nothing left to fall back on.
Yeah. Killed me a little bit. It was so hard to
You
watch.
can't throw knockout punches for 12 straight rounds and expect it's not Rocky. You know what I mean?
100%.
You can't hit every time in blackjack and expect to win.
You know what else was really sad? Zay Flowers, when Snead hit that ball out right on the goal line.
Oh,
I was like, oh my gosh.
I was at the gym watching that game on my phone. I was watching the game on my phone. I was on the treadmill or whatever. And I turned it off. Like I basically turned it off to walk back down to my apartment because I was going to turn on the TV. And they had just made that play to get down. It was like a big play to get right there inside the thing. By the time, and it took me 2 minutes to go from the gym back to my apartment and turn it on. And like the Chiefs had the ball going, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? Like,
they were just about to score.
They didn't even get a field goal out of that, so I had to like rewind it and watch it. Unbelievable,
dude. So sad. And just watching his face on the sidelines, I was like, I'm so sorry. But also, he was taunting earlier. Like, there's karma in football.
How about you? Speaking of karma, how about CJ Gardner-Johnson waving bye-bye to the 49ers at halftime?
There's karma in football. Also, how about the Chiefs wide receiver? It's blanking my name right now. Saying that they're faking his injury report.
Oh, Kadarius Toney.
Thank you. I'm like,
Kadarius Toney was on Instagram Live, I think. Yeah.
He went off.
Listen, I mean, you want to talk about a guy who's had just the most embroiled, dramatic, controversial start to a Kadarius Toney. It's like he's the highly touted player coming out of Florida, I think, goes to the Giants, never really gets it to click there. He gets an entire like New York City 5 boroughs back tattoo on his back, then gets shipped to Kansas City. Okay. Then in Kansas City, it's like they don't know how to use him. He's this, he's that. But it's like, hey, he's going to go through football rehab with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and that high-flying offense. And he kind of like makes a couple of plays here and there, and you're like, oh, he's going to be something. Then he has that offsides that negates the Travis Kelce touchdown lateral thing.
Beautiful.
And it's like everybody hates him, and it's like what?
And then he's dropping passes left and right.
Yeah, and then he's on social media calling out his team doctors and his team for faking his injury reports.
Crazy. I'm like, that's gonna be some drama right there.
This
okay,
league.
Last thing I got for us, the Avs. I just found out about this move. Apparently Friday night I was I don't know what I was doing actually. The Avs made moves this weekend. Tell me, who do we got? Should I be excited about this name? What's going on?
They did. They signed Zach Parise through a deal through the rest of this season.
Okay. I know the Wild are paying the Avs like a lot of money for him.
Yeah. So he's signed on through the rest of the season. And I think there's a couple of different ways to look at it. One, just from like a fan perspective, because Parise's been in the league for almost 20 years. He's been around. Okay. And Avalanche fans probably don't have the best taste in their mouth with this guy, because when he was with Minnesota in his younger years a little bit, he was kind of an Av killer.
Yeah.
He had some really big game moments against the Avs.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like one of those weird things, like when Bill Romanowski for the Broncos went to the Raiders.
Okay.
You know, or like whatever it is. And it's maybe not that heated, but I'm just saying, like, a guy that made so many plays against you suddenly suits up for you.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of it. He's going to be like a third line guy. It'll probably push Cogs down to the fourth line and put Dermy on the bench. So there's some structure there in terms of like McDermott's probably having a little bit more ice time than they would like, you know.
Dermy is here to be a fighter and really a fighter only. So yeah, you
Dermy
don't
loves
really
violence,
want him
right? Isn't that
out
McKinnon
there
said that?
until you have to put him out there.
Exactly. So I think this gives them a little bit of depth on their lower lines.
Okay.
It allows them to structure things a little bit better. But also, I think this could be a little bit of an insurance policy with Val Nichushkin about whether or not he comes back and all that. And obviously we wish Val the best.
Yep.
He's obviously been going through it and dealing with some stuff. But I think the one thing they didn't have last year when they just ran into the meat grinder against the Kraken was they really had no way to replace or replicate Val in the lineup when he went AWOL. So I think this is them learning from the past, and it's not like you're going to put those two players side by side and be like, oh yeah, these cancel each other out. But I think this gives them a little bit more mobility to work with, having Parise on the third line.
Figure that out now instead of waiting until the trade deadline really comes and hits, and then you got playoffs. It's going to come so fast. I told you that was going to be the last one, but how could I possibly forget this? Where is Embiid at? That is a question so many people want to know. The NBA is apparently going to investigate this, which I'm happy they're going to, but wow.
This guy, man.
This guy just pisses me off.
Like, listen.
See you in 2 weeks, Jokic. Just kidding.
Exactly. See you in 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, you saw him from the stands.
Yeah.
Good
for Nuggets Nation for chanting at him when he came out. For booing him.
So good. Booing him to the point where he's covering his ears. He's cupping his ears. That, to me, if I'm in the stands, I am going to lose my voice yelling so loud. And you know what? It's such a frustrating thing because we watched in this town everybody from the other players in the league to the national media to the other local media in other markets try to tear down Nikola Jokic prior to him winning his MVPs, finding every excuse not to give him his flowers and to do it, or to almost sidestep and be like, yeah, he's great, but he's not whoever. He's not Embiid. He's not Steph. He's not LeBron. We watched that happen for years and years, and he had to fight through that and basically make undeniable cases year after year to win his back-to-back and should have been a three-peat in terms of the MVPs. And nobody, everyone just seems to sidestep Embiid missing all these games, or they just kind of like, they look at it like a footnote. And it's like, if anybody else was doing this, and it's not just Jokic, if Steph Curry was sitting out of games, if LeBron James, for sure, because LeBron gets the polarizing into both of it, was doing this, people would care.
But I think this was the time that changed it. Right? The national media members were talking about, like, Embiid, you got to play because he wasn't on the injury report, because of the way it happened. I think this changed a lot of people's overall look to Embiid, and I'm just like, good. I'm so disappointed in him.
Joel Embiid was here in Colorado Springs at the training center, sitting across from Deion Sanders, who was telling him, hey, don't duck the smoke. If I'm getting Embiid versus the Joker on the bill, and that's what I'm paying to see, you better give me Embiid versus the Joker. And he'll do it when it's at home, when he's in his own living room. But he's not walking down the street to do that. And it just drives me nuts.
I could not believe it when I saw the tweets come across of that. Oh no, he's out. I was shook.
I said it. I said it to you. I said it to Will. I said it to all these, and I think I'll give Will some credit. Will was or from early on was like, he's going to duck it. He's not going to play. And I was like, no way, man. Not only this, I gave him so much credit. I was like, he's going to play in Denver and he's going to play well. Like this is what frustrates me is I'm willing to meet halfway with this stuff. Joel Embiid is an exceptional basketball talent.
Agreed.
Physically, he's unbelievable. But it's hard to overlook some of that other stuff. And so, like, for me, that should matter. And I think he's only allowed to miss, it's like single digits in terms of the number of games he's allowed to miss for the rest of the year. And a lot of those games...
But don't forget, he doesn't care about the MVP now. He just wants the finals.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing. And you want to talk about, like, miserable fan bases. I don't really have that much of a problem with Eagles fans. I know they're obnoxious and this and that, but there's something kind of like oddly lovable about it. Like
Jason Kelce for president.
Yes, there's something kind of like oddly lovable about it, kind of in the same vein of Bills fans.
Yeah.
Right? Philadelphia 76ers fans make me want to hit my head against a wall.
I know.
Like, they're like, oh, well, sorry, this is Jokic's Super Bowl is playing Joel Embiid. It's not the other way around. It's like, hey, Jokic has been to the Super Bowl. He's won the Super Bowl, and he was the MVP of that Super Bowl. You don't get to say that's his Super Bowl.
Get out of here,
If
Philly
anything,
fans.
Joel Embiid winning the MVP is his Super Bowl, because you know what he did that year? He choked in Game 7 against Boston. He had 15 points.
Yeah,
That's
baby.
like that's the biggest game he's ever played in.
Yeah, exactly. I love you, fired up.
Did you see that meme of Lamar Jackson and Joel Embiid? It was one of those, like, spot the difference between picture A and picture B. And it was Lamar Jackson after choking against the Chiefs and Joel Embiid after ducking Denver. And I was like, oh, that's easy. One of those guys actually plays in the big games. Yeah. He doesn't sit out. He might get blown out, but at least he took a snap.
Get it, Richie.
Oh, it drives me nuts.
Fired up. We love a fired up Richie Carni. Always love having you on. Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you for having me.
Love having you guys in the comments too. We will see you guys tomorrow, 12 p.m. Come hang out with us in Denver Sports Daily at 10 a.m. And then, yes, 12 p.m. tomorrow. We'll be right back here in these seats. Love you guys. Bye, everybody.